as was said before, I'm Mariella. I'm working for WWF Switzerland, and I've been working there for 2 years now. But in this role as responsible for everything that's related to food processing and food in general, which also contains sustainable diets and food waste, I'm only working for 3 months now. So feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A and I will try to answer everything. And if I cannot answer a question because I'm new to the job, I will definitely do this afterwards via email and try to find all the information. But for now, I'm happy to talk about eating for the future. What can we eat in the future? What can we eat now that there is a future? So it is a very big topic. I hope you are all well fed and have eaten already. And if not, feel free to grab something to eat as you do not have to talk anyways, because there will be some pictures of food during the presentation. However, I would like to start with the legitimation for this topic. Why are we talking about food? Why are we talking about food systems? Why is there my job, basically? And there is some quote from the food practice from WWF, which says, we must transform our food systems to achieve healthy people and a healthy planet. And it's very important to talk about food systems with an S, so it's plural, as we do not have this one single food system, but it is the international group of volunteers. I guess you are all coming from different places and probably have figured out that we do really eat differently among the world. But why are we talking about this topic? And I will only pick out a few from this slide. It is really the case that our food systems are responsible for almost a third of our greenhouse gas emissions. Agriculture is responsible for 80% of deforestation and is also a huge driver of terrestrial biodiversity loss. And this is why we want to change food systems. And in this slide, you can see on the left-hand side in this graph, you see the goals of WWF, and on the right-hand side, the goals of the food practice. And what we want for WWF, what we want to achieve is we want to have zero loss of natural habitats, we want to halve our footprint overall, and we want to have zero extinction. And this translates into the goals of the food practice, as we say, by 2030, there should be no deforestation and no conversion of habitats. We want that agri and aquacultural areas are managed responsibly, and this is the whole box of agricultural practices. We want that food loss and waste is halved. That is the box food loss and waste. And we want that the human and planetary health is aligned to halve the footprint of diets, which is the topic of diets. And we're coming to a graph which translates this all, and it is the transformation of the food system. And I truly love this graph, and I will guide you through it quickly. What we see on the y-axis on the left-hand side is the state of nature. So it is either we are exploiting nature or we're restoring nature. And on the x-axis, we're seeing time passing. And the gray curve is the status quo. And we are going downhill there. We are going towards exploiting nature. And what we want to achieve with our work is we want to bend the curve. We want to bring it up again to restoring nature. And we see 3 levers to do this. The first one is diets. The second one is food loss and waste. And the third one is by changing production practices. And I want to go through all these levers today with you and let's say not pointing out everything with the same space. So the biggest one is probably diets, and then a little less on food waste, and even a little lesser on food production. But we start with diets. It's also one of my favorite topics. So let's start with that one. And I would like to engage you a little bit. So I hope you have your phone right beside you, and you can go to the website menti.com and type in that code that you see right there. And I would like you to remember what you had for lunch. And please only answer the first question, because there will be a second one later on. Remember what you had for lunch, and maybe type in the main components of your meal, or maybe the name of your meal. Maybe you had something like Zürich Geschnetzeltes, which is like, we all know what it is, or at least a few know what it is. Then write in parentheses if you think your meal was sustainable or it was not sustainable. And maybe write down some keywords why you think that is. So it's that code that you see right here. I will now quickly switch screens so that we actually can see the results. So I see there are already some in. I share screen. Okay. Yeah, 4 people who already wrote something down. So bread, noodles, veggie, so much veggie. Rice and lentils, meat and yogurt. So yeah, now I don't know if you think it was sustainable or not, but I think I could tell you something about it. But yeah, that's very interesting. It's also good that you remember what you had for lunch. That's not always the case. Okay, maybe not sure from there. Okay. Okay, very nice. I wonder if you thought that they are. I think it's quite sustainable as it uses fresh meat. Yeah, maybe. I think the yellow one here is on the right track with the guess. Unfortunately, I do not have no guesses. Okay, but that's very interesting. Thank you very much. I will now share back to the presentation. I hope you see the presentation again. If not, someone points me to it, but I guess that worked. So the question that we are always thinking about when we think about this topic of sustainable diets is really, how can we feed 10 billion people healthily? And this is really important to us, that it's not only about how can we somehow feed 10 billion people, because people have to be healthy. I mean, the lowest emissions would be if you would just stop eating, but that's not really a solution to the problem, isn't it? So that is the question, and the question is that comes up because our food system is in such a disbalance. So we have 1 out of 4 people is overweight or obese, but on the other hand, we have 1 out of 10 people who are hungry or malnourished. And our diets are a driver of various diseases, such as heart diseases or diabetes. And at WWF, we work on solutions to this. We work on measures or recommendations to people to eat more sustainable and more healthy. And one of these solutions is the planet-based diet. And I don't know if you've heard about this before. It's not the plant-based diet. It's not a vegan diet. It is a planet-based diet. And what this does, and it was released fall 2020, what this does, it gives out recommendations for diets within the planetary boundaries for each country. So it gives out recommendation how in each of the 147 countries that were assessed, how you should eat to live sustainably. Let's put it like that. And what it measures is the influence of different dietary patterns like veganism or flexitarianism or how we eat at the moment on various environmental indicators such as GHG emissions or land use, water scarcity, biodiversity. And there are a lot of reports out there that do that, but what is really unique to this one is that it's country specific. And to show you this a bit more in detail, I brought you an example from Switzerland. And at the first sight, it might be a little much for an evening webinar, but I will guide you through this because I have seen this graph 1 million times. So what we see here is the per capita food intake in grams per day. And we have different columns, and we start from the left side where we have the current diet. So this is what we currently eat. We see there's a huge area of pinkish, which is dairy. The darker green is fruit and vegetables. The dark red is red meat, and red meat is included beef and pork. And when we go to the next column, we see the national dietary guidelines. So this is what the government wants us to eat. Still a lot of dairy, I would say. Then we see something that is highlighted. So that's the Eat Lancet diet. That is the planet-based diet. So this is what they would recommend what we eat. On the right side of that, we see the pescatarians. They don't eat meat anymore, but they eat fish. The vegetarians, they also don't eat the fish anymore. And then the vegans, they do not eat any products coming from animals. And what is interesting here is, or what is good to know is what we should eat to be within the planetary boundaries is really that Eat Lancet diet. That means we do not have to be vegans or vegetarians, or we do not have to say, I do not eat certain products anymore, but we just have to shift the volumes of what we eat. Because here we see it would be more fruits and vegetables, it would be more legumes, nuts, and seeds, but way less dairy and less red meat as well. And what this data shows as well, or what this whole study shows, is what these different diets do for environmental indicators. And I brought just one of those because there are so many, but I brought the GHG emissions. And here you can see what happens if we have different diets to the GHG emissions here in Switzerland. So as we can see, how we currently eat is the worst. And going to the right-hand side, it gets better. So the less animals we eat, the better it is for the GHG emissions. But here again, the recommendation is you do not have to be vegan because you can have this quantity I said before of dairy and red meat and other components of a diet, and do not have to be vegan, and you can still reduce your footprint largely, and this is what would be needed. And as this is a little technical and not really usable, I don't think that a lot of people go into the data. It's really available, so feel free to look at it and crunch the numbers if you want to, but I don't think that a lot of people want to do this and then just see, oh, I can still eat 286 grams of dairy and then measure this every day. This is the very short version of it. This is what you can do instantly is eat less eggs, dairy products, red meat. Again, this is pork and beef. And for your health, and this includes a health component as well, eat less sugar and eat more fruits and vegetables, pulses, nuts and seeds, and cereals. And I don't know about you, but this sounds a lot like what my mom used to say to me. I don't know. I grew up in Germany. My mom is Swiss, and she always said that. Maybe it's my generation. I don't know your age, but I think we all kind of know this a little bit. This is how this would look like in a plate. This is already a little more intuitive than the whole graph. And you can see we would eat a lot of vegetable and whole grains and a lot of plants in general. And only this blue and red surface are foods from animals. And then you can see the red and the green is basically what at our main protein components. And this is on the right hand corner, you can see what it consists of. And it would mainly be nuts and legumes and only a bit of the animal protein products. And if you want to have it even easier than that, or even a greater detail, but with ease, I can recommend you this. And I will send you the presentation afterwards, or I hope Anna will send it to you afterwards. And then there are links in there, and there is something that is called Besseresserinnen, which is very German, but basically means better eaters. And WWF Germany, so it's only available in Germany, sadly, in German, but it's maybe you can translate it anyways. They brought out a few guides on weekly guides with menu plans, how you can eat within the planetary boundaries with this data we just saw. So in this guide, and it's available for flexitarians, so there's still a bit meat and fish in there for vegetarians without that, and even one for vegans, so without any animal products. And you have a weekly plan, what you can eat on 7 days for breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner with all the recipes. And it's just great to try it out, maybe also only for a day. Maybe it's a challenge for you, like a little veganuary. And I don't want to stop talking about the topic without having included drinks. And I just had it with Anna about it before the webinar started, as I'm on my 4th coffee today, which is not the best thing environmentally wise. But drinks are often neglected in the discussion. We are often not talking about drinks, but for example, if we look at the graph for biodiversity, so not global greenhouse gas emissions, but biodiversity, an indicator that is often having a huge effect on biodiversity is coffee, cocoa, spices, and tea. Tea was the 4th one. So this is something we also have to look at. And here we see only the emissions. And if we're looking at the first graph, again, sorry, this is only in German. I just included it before the webinar because I thought it's a good idea to also show you something on drinks, but I didn't have the time to translate it. But TW stands for drinking water, just right out of not the sink, but the thing that is with the sink. So this is the best thing to do. You can drink this en masse, and it really has low emissions. But let's compare it to orange juice, which is this huge green bar. And if we think this is per liter, if we think we're drinking several liters a day, maybe we can switch to juices for a Sunday morning, but really see it as a treat that would also already reduce our emissions. And even for the water, which is the 3 first rows, where you have the TW, which is the water you can just get in your kitchen. The second one is the same water, but you carbonize it with a soda stream. And the third one is when you buy bubbly water in the store, which is way worse than having a soda stream. So maybe you think about that, so you also don't have to carry around the water you're buying. And in the graph down there, you can see coffee and cappuccino and tea. And maybe if you're indifferent between coffee or tea, just maybe choose the tea. Might be a good idea. And why cappuccino is so much higher than another coffee is because of the milk. So maybe switching to a plant-based milk is a good idea. And obviously, alcohol, so you have here beer and white and red wine also has higher emissions than drinking water. So maybe also see this as a treat. I think this is also good for your health. And to conclude on the topic of diets, I want to have a huge but for the planet-based diets, because we look at these diets in saying healthy and sustainable diets. And if we switch to healthy diets in Brazil, healthy and sustainable diets, that would reduce biodiversity loss by 64%, which is great. But if we look at healthy and sustainable diets or healthy diets in Indonesia, that would increase biodiversity loss by 91%. And why is that? This is because in Indonesia, we are still fighting that people are undernourished. So what we need to do in Indonesia is we have to grow more food. And this needs surfaces, this means conversion of areas, which is not good for biodiversity. However, we still want to do it, obviously. So what we have to do is we cannot only look at diets. Diets is a huge lever, but it's not the only one. And this is exactly why we also look at the other levers, because diets cannot do it alone. It cannot bend the curve alone. So we look at food loss and waste as well, and how the food is produced. And the next one I want to look at is food loss and waste. So, and I would like to ask you again to go on that same Mentimeter. So go on menti.com, and it's the same code, but it's written here again. And answer the question, how much food waste do we generate in Switzerland? And it's per person and per year. And I'm really curious about to see what you know about that. Let's see if that works. I don't know if that works. No. It's also the first time that I'm using this Menti thing. The presentation is about. Oh, yeah. 2 people. 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, I hope you can see my screen actually. I don't know. But I hope. Okay, very interesting. Okay, most of the people say it's 330 kilograms per year. Okay, let's see. Oh, even one more. We will see that later actually, because now we just start with the topic. Okay, thank you very much. Before I release the answer, I want to talk about a report that was released last year in fall by WWF UK, and it's called Driven to Waste from Farm to Fork. And I thought this was very interesting because what we're normally saying is globally 1/3 of the food we produce is wasted. And this is already a huge number. I mean, I think we can all agree that it is a huge waste if we waste 30% of the food we're producing. But what this study did, because normally when we look at food waste, we say food is produced and then it is bought by someone, even if it's only a processor, or it's transported. And on this way, in this process, it is wasted at some point. So in transport and storage, in processing and packaging, in retail, at home, in restaurants, it is wasted. But what this report looked at is what is happening before that. What is happening on farms, or even shortly after farm. So before it leaves the farm gate. And what they find, or what they found out, is that there is an additional 10% food waste. So we have around 40% food waste globally, which is an incredible and horrible number, because I always think about 40% and I always have in my mind that's almost 50%, which is not, but 40% is a huge number. And why is that? What is the additional 7 to 10% that they found? And it is, and you can see it here on the slide, it is harvest waste. So fruit and vegetable is left on the field, maybe because they produce too much. Maybe they produce something that is not matching existing standards. So I don't know, but when I go into Miku or Coop, I only find carrots that look like this pen. But actually, we also have carrots that have like a finger more or 2 fingers more, and you cannot even find them. And a producer is not going to collect them if no one's going to buy them. There might be cancellations on orders. There might be diseases and injuries with animals, or then also during harvest, things get lost, or during transportation or storage. And this is the additional 7 to 10% they found. And I brought a case study, and I chose chicken because I find this graph really impressive. So you see here how the chicken consumption and production skyrocketed. And it is crazy that for the other meat categories, you cannot even distinguish the lines because chicken needs all the space. And it is a very industrialized production. So we have a rapidly growing broiler chickens with not a lot of space. And this can lead to rejections because they are ill or there are happening accidents, machines are broken, during the transports, chickens die. So their food loss and waste already occurs. But then there are also things like it's called culling of flocks. I hope this translation is right. In German, it's Bestandeskeulung, which means that a whole population of chickens, so all these chickens you see here, and you do not see all of them, have to be killed because there is a bird flu, for example. And we just had this case in the beginning of the year that the bird flu was in Switzerland. And this leads, and this is the answer, and most of you knew it. I wonder if you study WWF documents, 330 kilogram of food waste per person in year in Switzerland. And I quickly want to mention this, and again, I'm sorry, this graph is only available in German. These are the different environmental impacts of food waste, and it is different to the volume of food waste. So often you see XX% is wasted on farms, XX% in homes, but this is for the environmental burden. And it's kind of logical, but the further in the supply chain, the higher the environmental burden, because in the beginning, the carrot only grew. This costs some resources, but not that much. But then when you transport it, you process it, you transport it again, you bring it in a home, you package it, this adds up emissions, which is why it is really important that in restaurants and in our homes, we do not throw away food. Also for the part before that, but for us as well. And this is why I brought a specific recommendation. So what can we do? And the first thing I always want to mention is the difference between the labels on the packaging. So we have once this use by label, and this refers to food safety. This means that after this date, you should not eat the food, or you cannot sell it anymore. And this is because there can be microorganisms on the food that grew. So it's mostly fresh fish or meat or some sort of dairy products as well. And you cannot eat them afterwards. And even if you might not see anything on the product, it might not be good anymore. But then, and these are the most products we're buying, there's the best before date. It's the Mindesthaltbarkeitsdatum in German. And this only refers to food quality. You can eat the food afterwards. It's only stating that up until this point, the food looks the same, smells the same, has the same texture, but it has nothing to do with food safety. So you, most of the time, can eat this food afterwards. And the trick to do, or how you can find out, is this label by Too Good To Go. You look at it. Does it look right? You smell it. Most of the times you smell if something is not good anymore. And then you can even taste a little bit, a little of something never hurt anyone. And if then there's no alarming sign, then the food is good still. So this is the recommendation for food waste. And we're coming now to the last point of bending the curve, which is the food production. And this is a really difficult topic because as a consumer, what you can do is you can really decide or have a big influence on what you eat. If you eat plants or if you eat animals, if you drink coffee or you don't drink coffee, this is a big decision that you can make 4 times a day. You can also control your food loss and waste, which is also great. But when it comes to production, it's harder. And this is why this is really for the very ambitious people then. This is for the people who really want to put an effort in it. But still, there are also easier parts to this. And this is what I wanted to show with this slide, because what you can do for production or to have a control over production mechanism is looking at labels, because this is basically what labels do, right? They go to the source and they try to make production more sustainable and also more socially sustainable as well. And what you can do to this, because there is a label jungle going on, you have a lot of labels. You can look at our label guide. I also linked it here. You will find it in a presentation afterwards. There will be a new version in fall. So this might not be true anymore, but in tendency, it's often the same. And here you can see on the left-hand side, the labels that had the best scores, and then going to the right-hand side with the labels that did not really have the best scores. And this is just the scoring. So maybe if you want to really have a low effort, you just see, oh, the best scores are BioSwiss and Naturaplan, and I just buy a lot of stuff that I buy with this label. And you can also go on the website that I linked here and go into more detail. As you can see on the right-hand side, this graph there, you can see for every label on what they are scoring high or low. And you can have all the information. Again, if you want to have more depth analysis, if you are one of these data crunchers. But otherwise, you can pick out the labels that you think that are available where you shop, and then have an impact on production as well. So I think I will stop here and see if there are any questions. There's the summary of recommendations. I just wanted to put it out there. But if you really want to have an impact but low effort, try to eat as many plants as you can and reduce your animal product consumption. This is the biggest lever you have. Then if you want to go a step further, buy labeled food according to the label guide. And then if you want to go beyond that, you can also see that you buy seasonal for that region. So that means you can also buy fruit or strawberries from Spain if they are there in season. And if you want to go even further, and this is something that costs more effort now, is buy local as well. And most importantly, do not waste food. And so I think I'm at the end of my presentation now. Are there any questions? I don't know, but I can also not see the Q&A. The hosts are not here anymore.
Yeah, no, there is no questions, Mariela.
Okay.
So feel free to write here, so then we can, ask you at the end of the presentation.
I am at the end of the presentation.
Ah, okay, very good. So yes, thank you very much, Mariela. It was super insightful. So let me see, apparently there is one question. So Sam is asking if there are any guidelines to reduce food waste at home.
Yeah, actually there are a lot of players who help with this. So it is, for example, you can go on several websites, for example, Food Waste, full stop CH or push point CH. So PUSCH. They are big players in the game in the food waste for consumers game. And there you can find a lot of recommendations what you do, also on storing advices, for example. So how you store different kinds of foods to make them last longer.
Okay, very good. Is there any other question?
Right, please, I think that I can see it. Oh, thank you, David. There was a thank you in the Q&A. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if not, perhaps one question. I didn't understand the carbon sequestration part in one of your slides.
Yes, let me jump to this one in the Q&A. Yeah, also from David. Okay, let's go to this one. Yeah, it is the GHG emissions, so the greenhouse gas emissions. And this is really interesting, and there is some debate about this as well. So what it is showing is when you switch to these diets, there is also a part of land that is freed. So a lot of the land we're using for cattle, or we're using to produce food for animals. So we can, for example, you can approximately say that you need 10 calories of plant-based food to produce 1 calorie of animal, or let's say pork. So this is really inefficient. And so through eating these diets, and you see for vegan, for example, it is the biggest impact on carbon sequestration. There is a lot of land freed that is not used to produce feed or animals anymore. And this land could be transformed into the natural state it had before it was arable land, and then can be what it used to be, a forest, for example, or I actually don't know the word for this in English, but basically other landscapes that store carbon in the soil or in the woods, in the forest. And this is what is shown there. So you would even have a removal of carbon by switching to these diets. Does this answer the question? I hope so.
Yes, apparently yes. I have one question, Mariela. So you mentioned like this example of the carrot, that we only see like beautiful carrots to sell, right, or to buy. Is there like any specific market or local, or where do we find like those fruits and vegetables that are not like good enough, like beautiful enough to end up in Coop or these big chains, Migros?
Yeah, that's actually a tough question. And in my work, I'm also working with companies. We have a lot of partnerships with companies, and this is always the chicken and the egg discussion, because they say if we offer it, people don't buy it, and people say we cannot buy it anywhere. So there's, for example, at Coop, you have this basket with unique is it called, fruit and vegetables, and those are the vegetables that are at least B class, so not A class or B or C class, that would normally not be sold or not be bought by them anyway. So it's always a good idea to buy that. And then probably if you go in local stores that are often more expensive, so I think there it is also a question of prices, you can find less perfect fruit and vegetables. And then on the other hand, you can go to a farm directly depending on where you work, where you live. Some of the farms offer this. They have farm stores where you can buy it. You can also ask them. And there are plenty of initiatives around Switzerland where they try to find a use case for fruit and vegetables, but they are often going into processing. But maybe if you're really interested, try or look at one of these initiatives. You can find it through Google as well, or buy it at Coop, the unique part. And this is actually something we're trying to do as well. We're trying to work with food processing and with the retailers themselves to say, offer this please, or buy it and process it, because for processing, it should be fine. I mean, you need other machines, but still do that. So we are working on it. For consumers, it's a little tough. That's true.
Okay. Thank you. There is another question here. So are there any initiatives in Zurich or Switzerland where we can help reduce food waste? As example of this Too Good to Go. So are there like others?
Yeah. So actually, I just heard about, I was at an event yesterday and I heard about an initiative that sounds really interesting where you go and get food from different companies in a card and you hand it out to people. And this is really a volunteering thing as well. I actually don't know how it was called, but I wrote it down because I wanted to look it up as well. But I can send this one with the slides, so I will pass the link forward. And I think there have to be more initiatives. You can also engage in initiatives like Tischlein Deck Dich or the Tafel, which are organizations that take leftover foods from retailers and sell it to people who are in need for less price, of course.
Fantastic. So we can share afterwards some of those links. I think it will be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me see if what is going on in Switzerland? What is going to be in Switzerland, like the policy to reduce packaging? I think this is a very good question. It's not the food waste, but it's like the packaging around the food that you buy and the vegetables and fruits.
Yeah, that's true. And I actually do not know much about it. We do not have packaging as a focus at WWF Switzerland because it is actually the case that packaging has not a very big impact on the environment compared to what you eat and how it was produced. And still, it's bad. Single-use plastic is bad. We agree on this one. But the impact is, if you look at a eco score, you always see the packaging is a small part of it. And in case of food waste, sometimes it's even the case that the packaging is protecting the food from going bad, which would be worse. Wasting food is worse than having packaging around it. So it's this whole thing. However, packaging is bad. We know there have to be good solutions. Some of the packaging is just useless. Also in terms of food waste, because packages are often too big and people waste food because they have to buy a big package of something. I don't know what the government is doing, but I know that the EU is doing a lot of stuff. And as we are not, even if Switzerland always thinks they are separated from the countries around it, they are not. And there will probably be the case that we will have rules on this as well. But I think it will take a couple of years still.
So we as consumers should pay attention to this as well, right?
Yeah.
Very good. There is a comment from Nina. So in the US, we have a company called Misfit Market, so that delivers imperfect fruit and vegetables. So I think it goes to your point that we have some companies here in Switzerland as well. And we have another comment from David and a question. So although it won't change my diet, because my diet is also to reduce animal suffering, but I know there is a theoretical debate whether or not it will be better for the planet to keep some cattle on Earth. In other words, that the ideal world is not 100% vegan. So is this true? So what is the WWF view on it? So should we all go vegan? It's better for the planet or not?
Yeah, that's a very good point, and we could have a whole seminar on this one, or we could have discussion with a lot of scientists who do not agree on this topic at all. But it's very interesting, and I can give you my or the WWF Switzerland side on this one. So I also think that to the vegan diet, there's more than just the environmental factors. So there are a lot of morals included as well. And this just depends on the motivation you're having for being a vegan or vegetarian, I think, as well. However, there is different debates on particularly cattle. So for chicken and pork, the case is kind of clear because we have to produce food to feed them, and it's not very efficient. So these two do not really make sense, but they have lesser impact. And this is also difficult, but chicken has in tendency a little less impact than the beef. If we look at, but we have to look at all criteria, not only GHG emissions. However, beef, I don't know the English word for this, but they can eat grass, and we cannot eat grass. And this is a huge pro that beef has, because they can eat grass and transform it into something that we can eat, and they can transform it into proteins in forms of their milk and their meat. And this is why there is still a good portion that is recommended, particularly in Switzerland, where we have a lot of grassland that cannot be used differently, that we recommend still in this Eat Lancet diet that milk products and also little beef can be eaten. And that is under the case that there's no feed that is supplemented as well. So they only eat grass, and you only have as many cows as can eat your grass. And if you have to give them other food as soy, then that's not okay.
Corn as well, right? So
yeah, it's corn and soy that is imported for, or not always imported, they also produce it themselves, but that's just an area surface food feed competition is what we call it. So yeah, there is our recommendation is that you can still, if you want to, but then also you have to see the balance. There will still be people who do not eat in this Eat Lancet diet, and so we also need the other extreme to kind of level it out again. And this is the one discussion, and the other discussion is that we are in a very privileged position here. We can think about this. We probably all have enough money to replace it and find our nutrients in other ingredients, but in other areas of the world, they just depend on cattle and also for their diet. But this is also not the intensive production that we know here most of the time. And in other areas of the world, fish is, for example, something that should be eaten more or could be eaten more because they just live right next to the sea, whereas we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even for the farms.
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting.
But you mean the fish farms, like
yes.
the aquaculture? Yeah,
yes.
The aquaculture. It's actually a huge problem because what fish eat in aquaculture is mostly also soy, which comes from often Brazil, where we have deforestation of the rainforest. Or it's even worse if it's carnivore fish, so fish that usually eats other fish that we have in aquaculture. We feed it with fish from the sea, which doesn't make any sense. It's just not very logical to me, but we do that, and so this is not very sustainable.
Okay, interesting. So Nick, I don't know, do you want to speak? So additionally, I heard recently from Andreas Lindau, who works on circular projects for ERZ, who said that eating food produced locally has more impact than avoiding packaging. I think it goes with what you were saying, right? So we should focus like locally, and then of course packaging avoiding, but like as a secondary.
Yeah, I think that this is why I put the hierarchy in the end. So I actually don't know if both do not have the biggest impact. Just to say, local and packaging are not the biggest levers you have. And I think because changing your diet is just draining. It can be draining as well. And I often hear from people that they say, but what can I eat then? Oh no, I don't know. It's too much, then I don't change at all. And this is not what I want to achieve with the work. And I think if you just have a little headspace to do something, then eat less animal products. And if you even have a little more headspace to do something, then look that you have labels and do not waste food. Make a good planning of your meals so that you don't have surplus that you have to throw away. And only then you can look at, is it season for the food? Is it season where it was produced? And then also, is it local? But still, if this is something close to your heart for other reasons as well, I think this is sometimes the case that you want to support your local community, which is important as well, then buy locally, yes, very important. But also with packaging, it's not the biggest lever you're having. And then also, if you still have enough headspace to also buy package free, do it. It would be amazing. But I don't think most of the people have the headspace for all these things you could do.
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention the impact on our health as well, right? So this is, again, good for the environment, and this is also good for our health. So it's like two things that we definitely should do. So I don't know if we have any more questions.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So we can wrap up. Thank you very much, Mariela. So we will share with you like the presentation and then some these interesting links, so then people can study a bit more and then make like more choices, like they understand like the consequences. And for those who are from Zug, we'll have like the next event, 25th of June, the sustainable picnic. So go there and meet up and register. So we'll be happy to see you there. And yeah, we're gonna send you a feedback form as well, and feel free to answer. And then please share with us ideas, topics that you are passionate about, that you want to listen more, and we'll be happy to organize for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mariela. It was very informative. It was excellent. We learned quite a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariela.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, and have a good night. I hope you have a good meal. Good sustainable year. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.